first reading. It is recommended that the board approve as a first reading the policy revisions to the policies listed below and as presented on attachment number 2. Number 200, enrollment of students. 202, eligibility of non-resident students. 217, graduation. 254, educational opportunity for military children. 810, transportation. 815, acceptable use of internet, computers, and network resources. 819, suicide awareness, prevention, and response. And 903, public comment in board meetings.
So moved.
A motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments about any of these first reads?
So is this the time we can have a discussion about 903?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So obviously there's been some concern with 903 and how we want to move forward. Probably not going to go over with some of my thoughts, but I think as public officials we have an obligation to uphold the First Amendment, which is free speech. I'm also a policy person as well, so I kind of see the conflict between the two. Where you draw the line at free speech, and then pick up with some of the comments that were made from the previous board meeting we had. So I'm actually just looking for help. Where can we land on this, where we can shore up the policy so that I feel comfortable with moving forward with a policy, while at the same time upholding our constitutional amendment with free speech. So I'm open and look forward to hearing any sort of comments.
So yeah, so I've given a fair amount of thought to the issue here. I mean, there's some things we'll probably talk about and tweak. I mean, I think the policy itself probably says what it needs to say as far as what things can do. I mean, you're right that, and we have had discussions with council on this issue. The fact of the matter is that this is a public forum, and we're very limited in what we can do as far as restricting speech. The First Amendment means we will all hear speech we don't like. It means we will hear things that offend us. We will hear things that we think are incorrect. We just don't have the ability to pick and choose what the kind of speech we want to hear. Part of the policy does provide for a statement to be made, and that's actually not part of the policy. That's a separate thing. I'm thinking maybe we could take a look at that and maybe tweak that and see and get counsel from that, and there might be some way. I mean, we can restrict on time, place, and manner type of restrictions, which means we can say that like we can say when and what part of the meeting people can speak. We can say you can speak for 3 minutes. We can say that what you say can't, has to be relevant, which is a broad term, which what some people might think is relevant and other people might think is not, can be tricky. Defamation absolutely is an exception to free speech, but we're not in a position to determine if something is defamatory. It has to be, I mean, the elements of defamation are it has to be untrue and it has to fall into a certain limited category of those statements that actually defame. Obviously, if you're somebody who feels like you've been defamed, we're not here to say whether or not you have a cause of action, but I just don't think that's anything we can really weigh in on. What we can do possibly is do a better job of expressing our expectations as to how the dialogue, we'd like to see it go, but expectations aren't necessarily requirements. But this is a dialogue that I think should continue, but just understand that we're not sensitive. We all sit up here and hear things we'd rather we didn't hear. But again, what we're able to do is pretty limited. But again, always open to suggestions, or if somebody can provide a counter opinion to that legal opinion. But I think that's pretty solid as to where the law is. Keep in mind that just because we don't say something or we don't stop somebody, it should not be taken as the board endorsing a statement or accepting a statement. know, or even approving of a statement. But I think at the end of the day, again, there isn't a whole lot we can do from a First Amendment perspective.
Yes, I really appreciate your perspective on that. I think the one thing that I continue to really wrestle with internally, you know, we take an oath, we have obligations that align with the Constitution, the federal Constitution, state Constitution. I think where I wrestle, and I want people to hear this from us, I said this the last time, you sit in these seats and oftentimes we have no idea what's coming to the podium, and it truly is like drinking from a fire hose. So where I get concerned is that and again that it becomes tricky with how we communicate this, but our teachers are professionals who need to be honored and respected, and so my encouragement to individuals in our community would continue to be to please use the chain of command. So public forum really isn't and again, I'm speaking for myself, the best place to come forward with a concern about a specific teacher, an occurrence in the classroom. We have a chain of command in the district to follow for a purpose. So if you're having a situation with a classroom teacher, please talk to that person. These are practices that we hope for and expect from our students. Please go to that teacher. If you are struggling in conversation with that teacher and need another set of eyes and ears, there's building principals. Beyond that, we have an administrative staff here at the office that would welcome those conversations as well. And so, you know, I've thought a lot about this week too, and again, we did seek counsel because it is a big deal. When we have individuals speak from the podium, it crunches this board from both sides. And we are working to maintain and honor relationship with our teachers union, with the administration, and having eyes and ears in the community. So it's truthfully, from my perspective, not helpful to have these conversations publicly. And there are avenues with which you can express concerns appropriately. So I agree with everything, Mr. Landis, you said. I feel like as a person, I have to sit up here and say there are other mechanisms to express concern before it hits this boardroom. So for what it's worth, that's my heart, that's my thoughts behind it. I'm open to other comments or conversation from the team.
If I can talk.
Can I just say one more thing, and then Mr. Brown, I definitely want to hear from you. I'll just be very vulnerable and transparent. Leaving last meeting, every time I walk out of this room, I have to ask myself the question, what can I personally do better? And I think every person that sits up at this table is asking, what can I personally do better? And so that is something that I affirm a commitment to. Again, what oftentimes in public comment, we can't control or tell people what to say because they do have rights. But the commitment on this end is to continue to encourage people to dialogue with people in a way that moves them towards the appropriate chain of command. Because we do need to show honor and respect to the professionals in this district to the best of our ability. So I just needed to say that tonight. I think that's important for our community and our teachers and our staff to hear. It is a priority of mine as a leader of this board that we have a good relationship, an honoring relationship with our staff, with our administration, to the best of our ability. We may not always see eye to eye, but that does not mean that respect goes out the door. Thank you.
So one of the concerns that I have with respect to this, I think this was all spurred from the comments from our last board meeting, is one of the solutions was to get in contact with that teacher, have that conversation with the teacher. As I understand it, if you do not have kids in the district, public does not have access to the teachers.
That is correct.
So that presents an issue as far as how the public can get to the teachers if they don't have kids actually in the district. I'm assuming you would go through the administrative process to get to that point. The other thing I'll throw out there as a point of concern is when people are making comments, sometimes the comments are necessary to bring light to a circumstance. There are things throughout the course of the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years where public comment has made the public more aware of some things that were some issues for the school district. So in an attempt to try to put forth some information, get information out there I know it may not be the best of formats, but for the public to become more aware, this becomes an option for some of our public comments.
An advocate of free speech, I definitely think that it's good to have community participation. However, I don't think teachers sign up for publicly being, and I think we have to be very, as a school board, we need to do an obligation to protect the teachers. I think that's,
Thank you.
I really don't feel, my wife's a school teacher, so I would not want somebody bring up at a school board meeting my wife. So personally, I think there's some things that we can do that would not necessarily inhibit somebody's free speech, but also kind of direct so that there's some anonymity. I think there could have been things, comments could have been redone. They could have not mentioned that individual, that teacher. That was, I think, not appropriate.
This is all excellent discussion. I've had this conversation with Mr. Litz several times. Prior to COVID, during COVID, since COVID, Mr. Litz actually helped us to draft that statement that we used to read at the beginning of the board meeting and the one that we do read now. So all of that has been vetted through legal. I just want to take us to 10,000 feet. So school board meetings are an opportunity for the board as 9 members to conduct school district business. That's the purpose of a school board meeting. And school code provides for public comment to happen, for people to comment on school business. If people have a right to do that, we completely understand that. But we do want to do it with civility. And I feel like we've lost some of that over the last several years. And I am very sad that our staff has been the victim of that. So I do appreciate the efforts that we are thinking about making to try to be a better example to the students of our community and to our greater community about what civility should look like.
So at this point then, we're up for approval, but if I'm hearing you correctly, Scott, you're saying not necessarily a change to the policy, but in addition to a part of the policy that allows for a statement. So do we go ahead and, are we gonna go ahead and approve 903, or do we separate that out and look at that later?
So this is a first reading.
Okay.
So you'll have another opportunity next month to make additions, ask questions, or subtract. Or you could elect to pull 903 off for more study. You have both of those options at this point.
Just for me, the comment I had about this, just kind of thinking about it from the last board meeting. I mean, for me, I fall very much on the side of having considered myself a First Amendment absolutist. Like, the First Amendment protects speech, and it protects speech that we don't like. It protects uncomfortable speech, and I think that's the way it's intended, which I think is important. The thing I think that I do want to give some of the admin here some credit, that for us as board members, like if we have stuff like that, even Mrs. Martin had reached out and tried to direct people to kind of through that chain of command and stuff like that, which ultimately can foster dialogue. Whether that dialogue goes well or not is, again, that's something different. But again, those are conversations that I think can drive people back to face-to-face conversations, having even tough conversations with people that can hopefully help foster change, foster improvement within the district. I know for myself, there's a lot of times I've had questions, things like that I've reached out to some of our district administrators, and they've been more than willing to accommodate phone conversations, meetings, whatever throughout the day, stuff like that I think has benefited myself in how we can do it. So for me, I just want to encourage people that, again, when you come here to share, you're more than welcome to do that, because I think it's important. But I do, however, think needs to be a level of just kind of respect that comes into that, just for our fellow community members, that we can kind of get back to that point of doing speech well, speaking, and kind of getting back to that just human interaction that I think there's kind of an art that has been lost in society in general. But again, for me, at the end of the day, Mr. Landis, I appreciate what you said, that I fall very much on the free speech side, that I think for me it is very dangerous when you start to limit things, even if they make us uncomfortable, I really struggle with that, and I think we need to stand on that.
Can I just ask, I just want clarity on you had said about the community members cannot speak with teachers, or?
Unless you have a student in a classroom, a random community member does not get an audience with a teacher, and that is by contract.
Okay, and but that is, like, that's a policy, or is it just you can't force them to? Would a community member could ask a teacher to meet with them?
If a
they
teacher
wanted
wants to meet with someone, they
Okay.
may do that, but a community member doesn't have a right to meet directly with a teacher.
Okay.
That is based on the teacher's collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah, I feel like that sounds different, because the community member could reach out to a teacher if they wanted to
But they
request.
cannot force that.
Sure, and you can't force
Absolutely not.
that, because it's, okay,
That is correct.
okay, thank you.
Scott, I want to thank you, appreciate the comments you made, and the aspect of, in the midst of the conversation, in the midst of the dialogue that's going on, to make that determination, or to ask our president to make the determination of what is defamation and what's not defamation is very, very difficult to do, right? And there we would, there's a tough line that we'd have to look at, so I really wasn't thinking about that before, so thanks for listening.
So we need to decide now as a board, what do we, elect to do at this point? This is a first read, so second read would be at our April board meeting. It sounds like we have some thoughts on perhaps tweaking a statement, Mr. Landis, is that,
So,
wanna make sure
yeah,
that
so
I'm
the,
saying correctly?
so, this is how I read it. So, I mean, there's a couple of items on the policy that could be open for discussion. For example, there's the question whether we want to add the, limitation, the total time limitation to comments, you know, either or both before or after the meeting. There's a new lease like to do where, commenters may not cede their time to other individuals. You know, frankly, I think that's probably a good policy to adopt. We've had a lot of comments on whether or not we need to revisit the recording of meetings. You know, and whether or not there's, you know, because that's also part of the policy that we could choose to adopt, or at least choose to revisit. You know, as to see if that's something we don't wanna do, or that we do wanna, or we may wanna do. And then, and then the one suggestion, whether or not we do away with, public, comment at, committee meetings, other than the committee of the whole. So I don't know where folks stand on that. It might make some sense to sort of, for that reason, maybe have some, either discussion or some further consideration, and maybe
So
for that reason, put it off to the next.
You have the option
meeting.
to vote for all of these as a first read and then make those changes before the second read, or you can pull that off now and we can look at it again at April committee of the whole, whatever the board chooses to do.
So we wouldn't kind of look at some of this stuff and decide if we kind of want to, like, check a box or something now and then
You could do that
again
now, if you
read
want.
it.
You may entertain that discussion now.
You know.
I'm curious what everyone's thoughts are on the recording situation.
To my knowledge, I believe that we have received information, from legal that that's not in our best interest right now. Is that accurate, Dr. Hershey?
Yes, for the reasons that we spoke about last time, because it is a rather lengthy process to make sure that what you're doing as far as closed captioning, et cetera. Not to say that we don't believe that people should have access to that kind of thing, but it is an extra expense and extra man hours for those things to take place.
What about a transcript? Is there any way to put out a transcript of?
No, we
of
don't.
the-
Board minutes are not done as a transcript. We do not have a recorder who is taking transcripts
If
of
we would
things.
look into that very specific piece, I personally would be curious to, I don't feel like I have enough information to make a decision about that tonight. I don't want to negate, any dialogue about that. If we would talk to Mr. Litz again and have that conversation, could we revisit this policy again? Doctor? Okay.
Yep, I will do that.
So would it make sense to, we're talking about expense, what is the expense? So
I
like,
think
what if we, like,
that's
that would be, I
understandable.
think, worthy of exploring, because like, we wanna be, budget-wise and smart, but if it's only like $1,000 or something ridiculous, it's maybe worth considering.
Yeah, I would agree. I would love to dig more into what that actually is so we can make a more informed decision on that particular part of it for sure.
On my list.
Any other comments about any of the portions that, commenters may not see their time to other individuals. I think, Scott, that was something that you had mentioned.
Yeah, I've not seen that happen, but it seems like it would be a good rule. I think I could see, it could be fairly chaotic if we have, you know, one speaker getting 2 minutes from this person and 2 minutes from that person.
And we wouldn't be able to vet if they were from our community, I guess, at that point either. Cause they do have to be able to be either part of our staff here at the district or in the community. We wouldn't be able to vet them ahead of time if we allowed that, I would think.
As far as, letting comments happen at the committee meetings, I think that we should still allow that. Just because I think if we don't, that it discourages attendance there, and there's not a whole lot of it anyways. I don't even think that I've seen a public comment yet at any of the committee meetings that I've been to, but I don't think we need to exclude it for any reason.
I personally, in my experience on the Ed committee, there have been several people who have shared comments in the past, and they've been meaningful reflection. I think that's one of those priorities to continue to include, community members and others in that conversation. So I think personally that would be something we should maintain.
Because I think you're taking away, but these are people's potential comment to speak, and I feel like that, again, that could be a limited of it. I'm not a big fan of that.
I agree with that.
I mean, I know, like,
So you're saying,
I know the COVID
you're
area
okay
had
with 3
some,
minutes or you're not okay?
well, I'm saying like total time.
Total,
So like if there was,
That first
I
box
understand,
on
yes, I
page three,
understand,
Mr.
yes,
Brown.
I understand, yep.
I mean, I realized in the COVID era, we had some anomalies, that we had some board meetings that ran to like 12:30 or something like that, which I'm sure nobody likes, but at the same time, I feel like those people that are speaking had a reason to be there, so I feel like we need to honor them that they showed up and give them their 3 minutes to speak. I think is very important.
I agree.
So far I'm hearing that you're looking at page 3, the second box, talk.
It says can make a Google form or change to email or call board, secretary. Are we considering maybe making an online,
We have talked
platform
about
for
that as a
them?
possibility, yes.
I mean, I think that would be good. It would probably save Mrs. Boyer some time, I would think, to be able to do that. I mean,
I think what we'd like to do is say it may be either, just in case.
They'd have to do it by 4 p.m.
Yeah, we have to do it by
the day
4
of,
p.m.
or if we could change that to even 3:30, only because then I have a little more time to make sure that I have them all
Yeah.
for.
My only thought on that would be we may need to extend